Okay, so this video is going to do a quick recap of square numbers and square rooting. You should have already seen this maybe at primary school or certainly in first year already. So this first half of this video shows how to square certain numbers mentally and how to use a square button on a scientific calculator. So any number we give you, if we put this a little number raised above it, that is called its power. Okay, and if a number is squared, that will be a little 2 up there, power 2. And this thing that I've called A, that's just basically called our base number. You'll hear more about that further up the school. But an example of a squared number is, it's written like this. This thing here is said out loud as 3 squared, or 3 to the power 2. But technically it's 3 squared. And another way of writing that is simply 3 times 3. Squaring a number means multiplying it by itself. So 3 squared is 9. Similarly, 5 squared is the same as 5 times 5, which is 25. Now, we'll expect you to be able to square the first 12, maybe the first 15 numbers without using a calculator at all. So the first 15 square numbers are 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16, and so on. I wonder if you could pause the video and maybe tell me what the next 5 would be. Have a try. If not, I'm just going to write them in for you. So the next one, 5 times 5, 6 times 6, 7 times 7, 8 times 8, 9 nines, 10 tens, 11 elevens, 12 times 12. And I would like to think most people can do up to there. I always teach it's worth knowing what 13, 14 and 15 are as well. 13 squared is 169. 14 squared is 196. Now watch, they're just very similar numbers, but the last 2 digits are reversed. And 15 times 15 is 225. Certainly if you're going to be doing National 5, that is, they might they might put those last 3 in a non-calculated paper. So it's worth just knowing them and trying to remember them or memorise them. You may have also seen these numbers before on times table grids. I know in my classroom I've got several posters and these diagonal numbers in mine are highlighted as red, and that's why, because they're your square numbers, okay? So if you're doing this on a calculator, before we actually go do some on the calculator, I just want to make you aware of the buttons. So the button we look for is the x squared, which is the one I've circled in yellow, and I've zoomed in there to make it a wee bit bigger. It's x with a wee 2 above it. Now round about that and other related buttons you are going to use at some point. To the left is the square root button, that's the one with the big tick, this one here. And to the right is one with a blank square. Now that means we can do any power. So we can do things like a number cubed, a number to the power 7, and so on, okay? And this one up here is, you would probably maybe go on to use that one next as well. That's x cubed. So that would be doing things like 2 cubed. And that would give you, is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. But right now we are focusing on the yellow one only. We're focusing on the squared button, okay? Right, so using your calculator, these are ones I want you to try using on with the squared button. And all you have to do is literally type the number 2.5, hit that squared button, and then write down your answer as a decimal, and that's 6.25. Okay, the next one is 18 squared, so you do 18, hit your your square button, and you get 324. Okay, so your calculator's just doing all the hard work for you. The next one, you could work this out mentally and say, well, 4 squared is 16, 2 squared is 4, or just go straight to your calculator. And the way you would type it in is you would do 4, hit your x squared button, plus 2, and hit your x squared button again. And it'll give you out the answer straight away of 20. Okay, and example 4, I should have changed that. I'm going to just make that into a 14 and a 12 just to make it a bit trickier. Good old copy and paste does not change that at all. So go to your calculator and try that one. 14 squared plus 12 squared is 340. So that's just trying to show you how to use your squared button. In the topic, most topics you're going to be using square numbers and things for, it's really handy to do it on the calculator rather than try and work all these numbers out mentally, particularly for example 3 and 4, although it is a method you could use. Okay, so now we're going to look at the opposite. We're going to look at taking the square root instead. So again, I will explain what this means and show you how to do it using your calculator. So the opposite of squaring a number is called taking the square root. And you can only take a square root of a positive number. There's no way you can square root a negative. And so the main example is this is how we write it. So we can say it verbally as the square root of 36. Or we have this kind of tick sign. Now normally actually that sign will go right over the number. Sometimes I can't get it to do that though with the font I'm using. So mathematically it's written as that's your square root sign of 36 and that equals 6. And it's just learning them off by heart. If you knew those first 15 square numbers squared, then it goes that you should know the numbers in reverse square rooted. So the square root of 36 is 6 because we all know that 6 times 6 is 36. However, most topics we have to take a square root at the end will allow you to use a calculator anyway. So this is the button we're going to use in the calculator. It's a giant tick with a wee box underneath it. And literally all you do is you press that button and then type in your number and then press equals and it'll give you what the square root is. So these are ones we should be able to do without the use of a calculator at all. You can pause and try these yourself just now, or just watch me tell you the answers if you want. So the square root of 100, what number times itself is 100? We all know that 10 times 10 is 100, so the square root of 100 is 10. The square root of 9 is the number 3 because 3 times 3 is 9. The square root of 1, people always forget that one, but 1 times 1 is 1, so the square root of 1 is 1. And this last one here, the square root of 1600, well, we should know the square root of 16, and we should know the square root of 100, so it's something to do with a 4 and a 10. It's actually 40, and if you don't believe me, I'm going to go to the side and do 40 times 40. And the trick would be do 4 times 4 is 16, 2 zeros in the question, so 2 zeros in the answer. So square root of 1600 is 40. But as I've already said, you are allowed a calculator. So to round each of these numbers to decimal places, you're going to hit that tick button, type in your number and then press equals. So feel free to go try this just now if you want, or I'll just talk you through what I get on the calculator. So the square root of 52, when you type that in, now bear in mind I've asked for 2 decimal places, sometimes one's perfectly acceptable. This gives us 7.21102, so on. So to 2 decimal places, just to recap how to do that, means we'd be cutting the number off there. So it's 7.2, the 1 is going to stay a 1 because the next number's a 1 also. So that's 7.21 to 2 decimal places. The next one, the square root of 416, so if you hit the square root button, 416 equals, it gives you the number 20.3960 and so on. It fills the whole calculator. So rounding that to 2 decimal places, we'd be cutting it off after the 39. The 6 will make that go up, so that would give us 20.40 to 2 decimal places. Okay, the next one, I just thought I'd do one with a decimal as well because it's not always whole numbers we have to square root. So square root of 26.3, square root button, 26.3 equals on your calculator. This gives us 5.1283 and so on. Cutting it off at the 5.12, the next number's an 8, so that goes to 5.13. Okay, and the last one, the square root of 811. When you type that in, that will give you 28.478 and so on. Again, we're cutting it off after 2 digits, so it's 28.47 just now. That will round up to 48. Now, I know I've done 2 lines there. It's perfectly okay to go straight to the answer as long as you round correctly. I just thought I'd put in the rounding part just in case you needed a wee bit of revision of 2 decimal places, because I assume that we've remembered how to do that. So maybe hopefully having just watched this video, play about with the calculator, make yourself familiar with that x squared and the square root button, and that might help with what's to come. Thanks very much. Bye.